All right, week 16 in your notes. Week 16 classwork. Somewhere it's going to come up here, I think. Ah, there we go, week 16. All right, so the final is available. I said this last week, so now I want to show you specifically and be clear. In my IT lab, under exams, the final is there. And put this in your notes. You can take it 3 times max. You can save it, so you can start it and save it and come back to it later. I don't really recommend taking it 3 times unless you just want to, okay? But I don't necessarily recommend it. Once you get the grade on the final you want to get, then you'll take a print screen just like you have with everything else in my IT lab. And then in here, you'll come in to the final. And then you'll, just like every My IT Lab assignment before now, you'll go in there and post your link to your print screen of what you received. Okay? No difference here. The thing I do want to say though, is that notice that this says it's worth 100 points in My IT Lab. And this, just don't let it, if you see it, just don't let it confuse you. There's 150 questions on the chapter, so put that in your notes. 150 questions on the final, worth what percentage of your grade? 10%. So when you post it, you're posting a percentage. So I was having to convert, and I'm like, nah, forget it. I'll just put mine at 100. It'll represent percentage. So when you give me your percentage, then I'll post that in Canvas, so you'll know what your grade is. Which, by the way, could you already figure out what you needed to get on the final to achieve the grade you want? Yeah, use that what if analysis, and I'll talk about that next week. Okay, any questions about that? 3 times, 150, post a print screen, boom, boom, boom. Okay, so this week, I've done a lot of thinking about this topic and this privacy and security because it's such an important one. And really, here's where I talk about this, is that privacy, right? Every private thing, the private data about you, and security, how secure you are related in this intersect, right? So the intersection between the two is really this, and this is what I want to put in your notes. The more private you are, typically the more secure you are. The thing about the world we all live in is that we share a tremendous amount of data about ourselves and we don't even realize it. So on social media, you combine that with how much the government collects. You combine that with how much cell phone providers collect. There's a lot of data about you. So in that vein, so let me just stop right there. So put that one part in your notes. The more what? The more private you are, the more secure you are. But even you'd have to actually go live on an island to be the most private and to be the most secure. It's just not a reality. So you just have to learn to navigate this world that we're in. So I was searching the web just to kind of bring myself up to speed, and I found a series of videos that I want you to watch for this week, which is why I'm doing this short introduction, okay? First one is a TED Talk about why privacy matters, and I'll give you links to these. So make sure when you do these in your notes, you give these at least minor headings so that I can tell all of your notes about the specific videos. But this guy, Glenn Greenwald, anybody heard of Glenn? Glenn was actually the major, and not only does he work for The Guardian in the UK, but he was the guy that really helped Edward Snowden put out the documents that he did. And if you don't know Edward Snowden, I definitely do some Googling about Snowden. Matter of fact, the biggest recommendation I have about that is a movie called Citizen 4. Anybody heard of Citizen 4? Citizen 4 is perhaps one of I think are definitely Citizen 4. It was a movie that's out there. If you want to check that out, it's about Edward Snowden, what happened to Edward Snowden, why Edward Snowden, in my belief, is a hero in our current contextual world. But I'm going to start with Glenn, because Glenn gives you a little insight into Edward, but it's really about why privacy matters, okay? And that's 20 minutes. And then you're going to watch, and this one kind of surprised me. I found this yesterday. It was 38 minutes long, normally longer than I ever like to give videos, but it was so good. It was so good, and it's about Mac and PC and really how to make yourself, how to give you tips about being more private and setting up Windows and Macs to be better protectors of your information, because a lot of times we don't even think about this stuff and we just put it out there. A couple of things I want to say. He talks about a program. How many of you have heard Malwarebytes? If you haven't, I definitely one to help you get spyware. He talks about buying it. I don't recommend it, although he says it's great to buy it, because I want you to know you can get it for free. Okay, it is available for free. For businesses, they have to pay, but there is a free version. This is not a full-blown virus checker, but it's more of a spyware checker. And for sure, you want to have something loaded in those areas. So he talks about that. He talks about a lot of other stuff that most of it I agree with. Like 95% of what this guy says, I agree with. And I'm like, and what really surprised me too, it's a little dated. It's actually from 2014. But I thought he did a great job. I really think all this information is really good for you to at least hear and be exposed to. So I want you to check that out. One thing he talks about, this goes in your notes, is a strong password. Strong passwords are really important for passwords that are critical to your private data, like banking passwords, really important. He talks about just putting symbols in regular words, but here's what I do. I use a website called grc.com. GRC has a service called Perfect Passwords. Is that it? Yeah, Perfect Passwords. So here's what this site does, and I use this when I'm creating Wi-Fi passwords, when I'm creating my banking passwords. So as soon as you go into the page, it generates these huge long passwords, right? Now what I typically do is I'll only take a part of that, because these passwords are really strong. They're a combination of special characters, upper and lower, numbers, all kinds of stuff. So I don't take the whole 63 characters, because I could never remember that. And by the way, that's actually a bad thing, because when people can't remember passwords, they typically write them down. Although I have to say, at the end of this video, he does talk about, instead of using some of these websites that keep track of all your password, he talks about a really low-tech way to do it. You put it in a document, you put all your passwords in there, and then you put a password on the document. And I've heard of that, but I was really kind of surprised he mentioned it. So, you know, again, I'm not telling you to do any of this stuff. I'm just giving you information. Probably one of the most enlightening things I had already heard of that he talked about is a website called Disconnect Me. Disconnect Me was covered under 60 Minutes a couple of years ago, still relevant today. And what you can do is install this into your browser, and when you go to websites, it'll tell you how much tracking that site is doing of you. Really good. Again, I'm not telling you have to install any of this. I'm just telling you this stuff is out there. Okay, that's the longest video in this series that you're going to have to watch. Then I'm going to have you actually watch two that Anton recommended that I think are really good. And one is about encryption. Where's the one I had about encryption? This is actually the second one. The first one's about encryption. I think I have it somewhere in here. By the way, how many of you know this? That on your YouTube you can go in and look at your history to see what you've watched? I do this often because I figure, like you can tell here, I watch both of them. Matter of fact, you can tell all the stuff I've watched. Kind of crazy, but this is the one, should all locks have keys? And then a footnote to this one called your phone. So these two videos really fairly short, 5 minutes and almost 3 minutes. So they're not that long, but really, really good videos. Okay, really pertinent to what's happening today. Most people don't realize how much information their phones are tracking about them. This is part of the reason we call them smartphones, by the way. And it talks about how it knows more about you than you know about you often. So, because you forget, right, where you've been, what you've done. So that's the work I want you to do for this week. Again, the more private you are, the more secure you are, but even in that context, you can't do 100%. So I'll have you, and I'll give you the links to these videos, but check out Snowden. Those are the videos you have to watch for this week. So this is our next to last lecture. So next week we'll focus more on end of the semester, how it works, and it won't be a very long lecture, I think. You know, I always say that I think. I never know for sure, but I think next week won't be. Okay, questions? Any questions about any of that stuff? Okay, I will attempt to get these links posted fairly soon so that you can start checking them out. Stop.